Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, Ph.D. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, this is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and who am I here with?
Howie Jacobson of AskHowie.com.
And today, I wanted to have another interesting talk with Howie about something that's relevant. Well, it's relevant specifically to the method that I use to help people stop overeating, which involves constructing a set of food rules, which you call your food plan, and then figuring out what makes you want to break them, and a variety of techniques for doing that. But it's actually kind of an interesting philosophical talk that could apply to any element of life. And I like that Howie lets me surprise him with these kind of things. So Howie has no idea what we're going to talk about, and often it's better that way. Right, Howie?
I was assuming we were going to talk about cetaceans.
I'm sure. I don't know that word.
I think it's something under the water, in the ocean.
Okay. Globigerina and ooze, like we talked about last time. I'd like to talk about a quote by Gordon A. Eady, which says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. See, the way this is relevant to overeating is that the big food and advertising industries have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to figure out how to get your rational thinking brain out of the way so your reptilian brain will consume their wares without compunction. People have heard me say on podcasts time and again that whenever you're looking for love at the bottom of a bag or a box or a container, there's some fat cat in a white suit with a mustache laughing all the way to the bank. Your health doesn't matter much to them. They'll justify their efforts by saying, in a free market, you don't have to buy their products, you have a choice. And while this is true on one level, to make that choice, you've got to first be aware when it's happening. And despite the desire to think of themselves as smart shoppers, most consumers actually aren't utilizing their neocortex to make most of these decisions. They're not using their rational thinking. The stimulating effects of these food-like products, combined with the evolutionary buttons their advertising presses in the lizard brain, makes most of these decisions much more trance-like than any of us would like to admit. Of course, the guys with white suits and mustaches are all too happy about this situation because it makes you much more likely to push your rational brain out of the way and fall for their plan, not yours. So the only defense is a good offense. You've got to have a plan of your own. As silly as it might sound, your food plan, a set of food rules that you choose, is actually a lot more than a list of rules you're trying to follow. It's more like the codified definition of what you consider to be healthy eating. It's your personal way of stepping outside of the matrix to say, I'm a human being and my life energy is not just here for the taking. I choose my own direction and I'll be the master of my own fate. Your food plan is a way of standing up to the industry and saying, no, thank you. I have a plan of my own and I will not blindly follow what you wish for me like an ignorant sheep. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So that was my quote of the week this week. And I'm just curious what you think.
I think I want to send you a heavy microphone so you can drop it.
You like that?
I like that very much.
Oh, good. What did you like about it?
My favorite bit is the framing of rules as something much bigger, right? Because when you look at an individual rule, you could think, well, this is, me being pedantic or over specific, or it's about the muffin or the Slurpee or whatever the rule is about, but the rule is always about something more than what the rule is about. It reminds me of when I was teaching at a small Quaker school. You can imagine the type of people who work at small Quaker schools and who found small Quaker schools tend not to be business minds, right? We're like socially conscious, psychologically wise. We love designing curriculum, but when it comes to like creating the budget, we're like, could somebody else do that for us? This spreadsheet has way too many numbers in it. And I remember the head of the school telling me that one of the best pieces of advice she got was from one of the board members who was a money guy, who said to her, Jane, all a budget is a manifestation of what you care about. And she's like, oh, immediately made sense. And so when you said that your rules are basically what was the specific phrase you used?
It's a codified definition of what you personally consider to be healthy eating.
Yeah, it's what you stand for. And whether you work with people to start with, whether you go ground up, bottom up, create the rules, and then have people kind of step back and look at them and say, this is my working definition of what nourishes me. I can imagine people doing that in all areas of their life. What media do I consume? Is doing every single puzzle in the New York Times online my definition of what nourishes me, or is it something that keeps me from getting started and doing the important things? Is this group that I meet with nourishing me, or am I just afraid of saying, no, I don't want to attend anymore, right? So I love the framing, and I think it's extremely universal.
When you take the time to codify even a single rule that defines how you want to be in a particular situation, it's like collapsing the quantum wave function into a particle. You're really turning your values into reality, and then you immediately see any discrepancies between how you're conducting yourself and what the reality really is and where you want to go. And so I always say that, a rule like I'll only have chocolate on the weekends, it's not just a rule, it's really a statement of character, because character is just what we habitually do at the moment of temptation. And if I know that I never have chocolate during the week, then I become a person. I become the kind of person who doesn't have chocolate during the week. I think the way that our brains are set up, we're always looking to figure out what kind of person we are, because we don't have time to think through every last decision. And so we have these shortcuts, and that shortcut is really character. Would this kind of person do that kind of thing? And what would this kind of person do? So when I don't have chocolate during the week and I become someone who doesn't have chocolate during the week, I'm a person who values my health or my weight or my energy level or my ability to sleep. And so what else does someone who wants to feel energetic during the day and sleep well at night do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A rule is not just a rule. It's really not just a rule. It's a sacred thing.
I'm going to come at it from another way. I coach people on getting their desired outcomes, and one of the steps along the way is figuring out the optimal behaviors and patterns and character that they want to develop in themselves to get those outcomes. And what never works is general statements. If I'm working with an executive who's known for shutting people's ideas down, and so we're working on, I want to be more inclusive in meetings. I want to be more respectful in speaking to my direct reports. That doesn't have any legs. It's a good statement, right? It's like, okay, good, we're on the same page. Then we want to make it vivid and specific, which is to say we turn it into a rule. I will count to 10 when I feel like interrupting and focus my attention on the words the person is saying. Right? If I think something is a bad idea, instead of saying, that's a terrible idea, come up with a better one, I will ask a curiosity-based question about what are their assumptions behind the idea. And then all of a sudden, you've got a live example of what it means to be respectful or what it means to be open to other people's ideas. And without that, they're just struggling against some amorphous concept. And first of all, they never know whether they're achieving it. And they're probably missing the most important opportunities to enact it.
Definitely. Yeah. Specifics make things happen, right?
Yeah. They're,
I guess that wasn't a brilliant
yeah.
that wasn't a brilliant synopsis. I was trying to think of something more. Duh, how we say good thing. How we say good thing.
20% of my brain is still trying to get cetaceans into the conversation.
That's funny. What would you take away from this that would change how you act in your day-to-day life or with your clients?
One thing is to recognize both that rules are immensely important and not important. Immensely important in all the ways we've talked about, and not important that if I break a rule, it doesn't mean anything about the future. So I want to tie the rules to the identity going forward, but not back into the past.
Yeah, that's why I say commit with perfection, but forgive yourself with dignity. When you're aiming at the target, you have to aim perfectly. You have to really put your whole heart and soul into it and see yourself hitting the target and purge that doubt and insecurity from your mind. But if you make the mistake, then you need to switch mindsets and forgive yourself with dignity so that you can figure out what went wrong and how to change your aim and get up and aim with perfection again.
Yeah, I saw a fun movie on Netflix this past week called The Beautiful Game, and it's about an international soccer tournament, and all the players are homeless. All these different countries somehow, I don't exactly know how it works, but they, send homeless people to play soccer internationally, and they make a big fanfare about it, and it's all about pride and teamwork and acknowledging your past and moving beyond it. And because it's based on some true stories, it didn't have the classic Hollywood arc of the underdog winning it all. So I'll say that much about not spoiling it. And so the coach, played by Bill Nye, is in the role of the inspirer, the wise one who lifts up these players. And so before they're going to play, he's like all about like, you're going to win this. You're going to be the best in the world. You're going to win this for England. When they don't, he gives a totally different speech that's even better, right? About what this really meant.
I see. Okay, I want to see it now.
It's got every sort of heart-tugging cliche in the book, and I still enjoyed it immensely.
But it involves the commit with perfection. Failure is not an option. We're going to win this. We're going to win this. We're going to win this. And then, okay, we lost, but what can we learn? And aren't we even stronger because we lost and we can learn from it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the only way to be. Winston Churchill said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. What counts is the courage to continue.
You know what else he said?
What else did he say?
According to my father, he was flying over the Grand Canyon and he said, this would be an excellent place to drop used razor blades.
Did your dad fly over the Grand Canyon with Winston Churchill?
No, it certainly was secondhand and it may have been apocryphal.
Your dad worked with Martin Luther King, though, right?
He is in a picture with Martin Luther King, and they spoke at an event shortly before the King's assassination.
Yeah. I spent 1 hour with Stephen Covey. We traded consultations. He wanted some marketing advice, and I wanted some leadership advice. But it's been my claim to fame for 30 years. That's what I did, 20 years.
Was it worth it?
I mean, it was for me at the time. It's probably very basic for anybody that knows anything about leadership. He basically taught me to try to develop leaders in the business rather than to just have a set of directions for them to follow. It was really leadership 101 because I grew up wanting nothing but to be a psychologist. I wanted to sit in a room with people, have them lie down on the couch and tell me about their mother. That's all I wanted to do when I was a kid. And I didn't study business. I never thought about having a group of people that I managed or inspired or led. I thought I'd write books. I thought I would talk to people in small womb-like environments, and have them pour out their soul and let me into it. I'd found myself a fish out of water like you wouldn't believe when in 2001, right after 9/11, I had 21 employees and we were going down really quickly because nobody was coming to New York to do what we were doing. It was right after 9/11. I just did not know how to be a leader at that time. I know how to give everybody a hug, but that's mostly all I knew. It was helpful. It was a losing situation. In that situation, there was really no way to save the business, but there was a way to save the people and save myself. I think he facilitated that in some ways.
A great person can say something very simple and you can take it in.
Yeah, like it wasn't enough that I could read that in a book, but the fact that I had so much admiration for him. I had used his systems to organize my life in a lot of ways. They say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but this was a case where it was really good to meet my hero because he walked the walk. He seemed like a guy with real integrity, and he was a very good listener, and he tuned into exactly what my highest and best need was and left me with a really good impression of him and everything that he'd done. So I was willing to listen to him where I wasn't willing to just take it from a book. I had talked to other leadership coaches, and they'd said something similar, but didn't really get through to me.
Well, it also sounds like he was listening enough that you felt like he had something specific for you from his big bag of tricks.
And also the fact that he would meet with me. Like he wanted my advice, and that was a really heady thing for me, which kind of boosted my confidence. And I thought if he wants my marketing advice and he knows we're in the middle of this horrendous downturn, then I must have something worthwhile to offer. So anyway, long time ago, interesting hour, very interesting hour of my life.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.